Hello and welcome back. How long does it take to repair credit? This is an extremely common question that I get asked all the time. We're going to dig through the details of what that looks like in this episode. In this episode, we'll be diving into what can be done to remove those inaccurate, unverifiable, and obsolete items on your credit profile. We'll be discussing items that may be more of an issue to deal with. We'll be talking about the CFPB and how they can potentially help you. I'll also be giving you some tips to help aid in improving your credit profile. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to repairing credit is that there is not a magic wand that somebody can wave over your credit and make it better. A lot of people think that if they secure a company's services to try to help them with their credit, that somehow 30 days later, everything's gonna magically go away or be better. And that's not realistic. Now, to be fair, there are a lot of companies out there that advertise these types of activities, and it's not necessarily accurate. The reality is that anything that's negative on your credit profile, derogatory, late pays, collections, charge-offs, they can stay on your credit for 7 years. If it's a positive item, it can stay on your credit for 10 years. So your credit report is broken up into minor and major, what are known as derogatories. Your minor derogatories are going to be your late pays that fall under 30 and 60 days. Anything that's past the 90-day late pay, 90, 120, 150, 180, what happens after 6 months of being late? It goes into charge-off status and then potentially into collection status and then maybe even to judgment status later on. Those are all considered major derogatory items. And the reason is because the whole scoring algorithm is designed to be telling as to the ability of a borrower to pay back money in the next 24 months and not be 90 days late. So do you get it? Minor is before 90 days. Major is after 90 days, and that purpose is because the whole scoring algorithm is designed to be telling if you're going to be 3 months late. So once you hit that trigger, we've got bigger problems. Okay, so what do I have to do in order to repair my credit? The first thing that you need to do is you need to get yourself a tri-merge report. You're going to subscribe to some type of credit monitoring system that's going to put the credit bureaus side by side with each one of your accounts. You're going to go through all of your accounts. You're going to look at every aspect of that account. And if you don't recognize if there's a late pay, when that account was opened, the balance, or anything about that account at all, remember, you have the right, so says the Fair Credit Reporting Act, to dispute that account, so long as it's a legitimate dispute. So while disputing with the bureaus, you want to send them letters. Sometimes it may make sense to send them certified documentation, but you want to list the exact nature of the issue, the account, and the reason that you're disputing it. I'm disputing this account because it shows a late pay from 3 years ago that I have no knowledge of. Please remove the late pay. You also have the ability to reach out to the original creditor, and we've talked about this in previous episodes. If you reach out to the original creditor, they can also start the dispute process for you. So it does make sense in many cases to reach out to the original creditor and also to the credit bureaus. Now, if you take the path to reach out to creditors directly, believe it or not, your creditors do want to help you. Now, if you've got a situation where you have a singular late pay that happened, let's say 2 years ago, 6 months ago, or even maybe 3 months ago, and it's just one late pay, and you've had that account for like 5 years and you haven't had any mistakes at all, your creditors do want to help you. Now, the Fair Credit Reporting Act says if it's accurate information, they're under no obligation at all to correct that for you, but you'd be surprised if you have good payment history and you are very kind with them on the phone and you get to possibly a manager, you kind of go up the food chain in terms of who you're talking to. If you're nice to them, honey sometimes wins these wars, and in some cases they'll switch from your late pay to saying paid as agreed, never late, just by that simple phone call. Now, I'm not saying everybody will do that, but there are plenty that will. So if you have a late pay or something that you can write with the original creditor, I suggest that you go that route first. Okay, now in terms of charge-offs and collections, now after an item or an account goes 30 days, it goes all the way down to 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, it goes to 6 months of being late, then it can go in a couple of different directions. The first thing is if it's bank debt, let's say it's a Capital One, I don't know why I'm picking on Capital One, but let's say it's a Capital One account that didn't get paid. It went 6 months without being collected on. Capital One's gonna charge off that account. Now there's some confusion about what charge off means. I've heard clients clients tell me all kinds of things they think that means. They think it means they no longer owe the money on the account because it's a charge-off, right? Charge-off means I don't owe. That's not accurate. All charge-off means is that Capital One has written off this debt on their bad debt expense. That's all it means. It's an accounting terminology. Capital One will still pursue you, I promise, to pay that debt. And if it's over $1,000, Capital One probably will litigate. That's just the way that they are, right? Capital One is a very litigation-happy company. And there's lots of creditors that are litigation-happy and lots of creditors that are not litigation-happy. Now, once it goes to charge-off status, it can go in a couple of different directions. Let's say Capital One has a $500 debt that wasn't paid. They tried to collect in-house. There's a second direction it can go. Capital One can expedite that, and they can actually outsource that collection activity to a third party. Now they're outsourcing that collection activity to a third party. That means that Capital One very much still owns the debt. And the way you can tell on your credit report if the original creditor still owns the debt is because under the charged off account on your credit report, it's going to show a balance. So just because a third party is contacting you on behalf of Capital One, it doesn't necessarily mean that they sold the debt. They could just be outsourcing. Now, the third and final way that a charge-off can evolve is it can actually get sold directly to a third party, an independent third party called a collection agency, and now they own that debt, and they're no longer trying to collect on behalf of that original company, but they actually bought that debt in its entirety. And you'll know that because the charge-off activity will show that there is a zero balance, and then you'll have a brand new collection, a brand new, shiny, beautiful collection on your credit profile with a third party that you probably don't recognize and a new balance that's owed. All right, so let's talk about collections. Everybody always wants to talk about collections, and for good reason. They're annoying. They cause a lot of problems in our credit profile, and if you're trying to, let's say, qualify for a mortgage, collections do amazing amounts of damage to your credit score. Okay, so you've got this collection on your credit profile. You've got a third party that's representing that collection agency. And in many cases, you're not going to recognize who that's from. You're going to have a third party like Portfolio, Midland, Credit Systems, or some of the other collection agencies. You're not going to know who that person is. And by that very statement that you don't know who that is trying to collect on your credit profile, you have the right by law to dispute that item. And you should dispute that item. Say, I have no knowledge of this account. I've never done business with this company before. Please delete from my credit profile. You should send out documentation to each one of the credit bureaus, and you should also send validation or verification of debt to the original creditor and also to the collection agency. So you want to send out this documentation to the collection agency that says, hey, listen, I don't know what this is. I don't know who you are. In our letters that we send out to these collection agencies, we also send them a cease and desist. Do not contact me by phone. I need proof of the actual debt. So there's many things that you can say in that letter, including I also dispute this account because I have no knowledge of it. So you want to reach out to the collection agency, in some cases the original creditor, and all three bureaus. There's lots of documentation that needs to go out. Okay, so you've gone through all of the different aspects of your credit profile. You've disputed what's necessary. You've looked for any inaccuracies, anything that's obsolete, anything that doesn't make sense to you. There is one final thing that you can do as kind of a final measure to deal with some of this stuff. But before we get to that, please like my video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be working hard to bring you a video every weekday over personal finance items, credit, and lending. So here's the secret thing that you can use if you have gone through all of the measures that we had talked about previously, and let's say that you have a collection that you know that is either not legitimate or that was settled before it went to collection. Let's say you've got a problem there. There is a federal organization. It's called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's called the CFPB. Okay, you can go to the CFPB. You can submit a complaint on that collection agency and also all three bureaus and tell them, listen, this is an inaccurate collection. That collection should have never gotten to collection status. I paid the original creditor. Or you can say that that collection is completely bunk. It was fraudulent. I've got a client right now who's dealing with AT&T, a collection that's on our credit profile. She's never had AT&T. We've tried to get it corrected through the bureaus. We've tried to get it corrected through the collection agency. And now we're going to regulators to try to sort that out. So if you've gone through your credit profile, you've done your due diligence, you've sent out your validation of debt letters, you've disputed the credit bureaus, and there's still inaccuracies on your credit profile, then I recommend you take it directly to regulators. Now, you're gonna have to have cause, right? You can't just say, not mine, and you're sending a regulator complaint. You actually have to have specifics, because when you send things to regulators, it expedites the situation. Again, picking on Capital One, if it's on Capital One is gonna assign you somebody who's probably gonna call you and talk to you about, hey, we just got a regulator complaint from the CFPB concerning your situation. You have to have an actual verifiable reason to do that. In other words, you can't just make up stuff. It's got to be something that's legitimate, because they're going to go back, they're going to listen to conversations of recordings that you've had when you called into the company, they're going to look at their notes, they're going to get to the bottom of it. But again, if you've tried everything else to get things sorted out, going directly to the CFPB makes perfect sense. Okay, so now let's remember. Okay, so what wins the credit repair wars is going to be persistence. It's going to be documentation. And it's going to be persistent documentation, right? So your diligence is going to win these wars. So in terms of repairing your credit, persistence and documentation wins these wars. You're not going to make your credit perfect overnight. It is going to take time. And depending on your situation, it can take a long time or it can take a short amount of time. It just depends upon what you've got going on.